Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to make my contribution to the 2020 budget debate. The Minister of Health, Mr. Speaker, just reminded me of an ad that I saw on television many years ago that had to do with some sort of a hair product, but he was representing Hair Club for Men. Maybe I need that, but what I'm trying to get across is that the gentleman in the ad was saying that I'm not only a spokesperson, but I am also a client. So I'm hoping that you're just not a spokesperson for health, but you're a client. Good. Mr. Speaker, quite a number would have been said between last night and this morning. Well, up until a moment ago. There are a few things that I would like to consider, Mr. Speaker, as I believe that they are very important to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in particular, our young people. Mr. Speaker, I have been given the Shadow Ministry of Youth, Sport, Community Development, and Local Government. Mr. Speaker, we have heard so many things from the Minister of Finance with respect to sport, and also over the years we've been hearing a lot about sports as well from the Minister who has been making sport with sports. Mr. Speaker, making sport with sport, man. I was browsing through some of the estimates on the budgets of the past couple of years, and it will appear to me that the government of today, having abandoned the sports for such a long time, is on the eve of an election trying to create the impression that they're once again concerned with the welfare of the athletes whose talents they have destroyed over the years. Yes. Mr. Speaker, in 2001, I can vividly remember emissaries of the Unity Labour Party, prior to getting into government, coming to me saying that they recognize that I've been somebody who was involved in sports, and as a former athlete, cricketer, footballer, sport administrator, they would have liked my blessing by supporting the idea of a national stadium as presented by the Unity Labour Party. That is 2001, Mr. Speaker. They never succeeded in luring me into supporting that party, because I recognized, Mr. Speaker, that it is a government in waiting, desperately waiting to get into government, and they would say anything and do anything to get into government. And one of the things that I purpose in my mind is that no nothing that is offered, no food that is offered by the king, no meat offered by the king would be able to entice me into joining them. And Mr. Speaker, you don't worry about that. You'll be gone long after I'm here. Well, you see, I think you should have really taken a little heed to what the Minister of Health said a while ago. But you've done a great job defying, you've beat the odds. But don't worry, you'll be going out soon. The time of your departure politically is at hand.
Are you serious?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member.
Yes, sir.
That was a serious comment?
Politically. Was it a serious comment, Mr. Speaker, when I heard members or certain people on the government side said that NDP must suffer and die politically? Was that a serious comment?
No,
Well, I'm not surprised that you don't know about that.
No, I hate to disturb you in any way, but you were addressing the Honourable Minister of Works.
I was referring to him.
You were referring to him?
Yes.
And the Honourable Minister of Works is a notorious consumer of alcohol. And tobacco. So when you say
Mr. Speaker, the whole nation and the world is listening to you. I am a notorious consumer of Campari. Okay? Please correct your statement.
Honourable Minister, please, I want you to know that I don't know what came over me to say alcohol. I really wanted to say tobacco to address the points. But yes, you're well known as a consumer of Campari. In fact, you have got me to taste it and like it. But to go back to the Honourable Parliamentary Representative for South Leeward, I was surprised that you took that point. I heard you say politically after, but that was not a good point to take.
Which one? Which point?
Well, you know what you said. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, let me make something abundantly clear here. When I come to the Parliament, I do the business of the people who send me here. I do not come with any ill will to anyone.
Very well.
And when I say that the time of his departure is at hand politically, I was making a comment.
Oh, I didn't hear politically.
You didn't hear that part?
No, I didn't.
No. Oh, okay.
I heard politically
Mr.
after.
Speaker.
I heard politically after.
Yeah. So, that's the point.
Very well.
He was
proceed.
making the point that I am making perhaps my last speech, but I will be here long after you're gone. Mr. Speaker, the National Stadium that has been promised since 2001, there was much fanfare. Groundbreaking, yes. And this is evident in the budget speech. Maybe not in reference to the National Stadium, but using those same words. Fanfare, a groundbreaking ceremony, and that is applicable to the National Stadium. That was promised. We know that there was a groundbreaking ceremony. We know that there was so much things said about this National Stadium being presented to the people of this country. Now, Mr. Speaker, 2002, there was an allocation when they get into government. That was hot on the agenda, $4.6 million for this National Stadium. In the budget of 2012, Mr. Speaker, the National Stadium grand total was $0.00. And in the description there, it said that the project is on hold. That was a 2012 and we're now into 2020, and all of a sudden we're hearing talk about, not the National Stadium, but we're hearing about a world-class track, athletic track. So we wonder, Mr. Speaker, how is it that this government has not been able to deliver a promise for so many years? And the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, especially those young people, have to be asking themselves whether or not the whole idea of a track is something that they're doing just because election is this year. They use the National Stadium to entice you into voting them. And now that they are in their twilight year, now that they are at the hour of departing office, they are now, well, all of you collectively, they are now coming again, Mr. Speaker, trying to fool the athletes of this nation. Now, Mr. Speaker, what began in that project a long time ago, and then you couldn't find the boundaries. I don't know if you use satellite imagery to find it. But all of a sudden you're breaking ground again. But I'm confident that the athletes of this country would have seen enough of the Unity Labour Party, a party that talk a good talk, that promised so much and delivers so little. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that can't be really serious about sport. They could never be serious about sport. And I want to read something here on sports, that is page 32 of the budget speech as presented by the Minister of Finance. In a youthful, developing country like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is almost impossible to overstate the importance of sports. I'm wondering, when did this government recognize that there was such a high premium to be placed in sports? They say that sport builds health, skills, discipline, teamwork, communication, national pride. And all those were neglected by this government. They were not important. But just before the election, it is important. And speaking about national pride, Mr. Speaker, when you look at the condition of the sporting facilities throughout the length and breadth of this country, I wonder where is the pride. It is shameless. It is an embarrassment, to say the least. Generally, the playing facilities in this country have been left to ruins. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the young people of this country, those athletes, the very people who are athletes today, this promise could have been made, I believe, some of them, their parents, the promise would have been made to their parents. They now have children, and you're trying to make that promise to their children again. So for somebody who was 15 years old, Mr. Speaker, in 2001, somebody who was 15 years old, 19 years after, that person gone over the hill. Who could have known? And I'm saying that some people are trying to advertise on social media the athletic facility as a Usain Bolt type facility. But how many Usain Bolt type athletes will have fallen through the crack because of the neglect of this government? Because of the inability to deliver the promise that you made, that you dishonestly went out there and campaigned on, knowing that you were never going to deliver that project. But the New Democratic Party government, after this election, will deliver that national stadium.
Why didn't you do it in 17 years?
Well, I don't know why you're making such a foolish argument. You've been there almost 19 years. Why hasn't it been done?
19 years.
You've been there longer than 17 years. It hasn't been done. Your time is up. Your time is up. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move on. We're still on sports. This government again have the audacity to talk about sports against crime. They have a grand total of $100,000 allocated. There's nothing that says that they're going to get this $100,000. But what is that for? To coordinate and implement sporting activities. For who? Mr. Speaker, as far as I'm concerned, it is a government that has no clear objective where it wants to take the athletes of this country. There is nothing, Mr. Speaker, that points to the fact that we want to resuscitate sports. There's nothing that says that we're going to have sports, organized sports, not run up and down, not bust a sweat like you said last year. Bust a sweat? You're lucky somebody didn't bust something. But Mr. Speaker, a serious government will ensure that there are clear objectives. Clear objectives, Mr. Speaker. Clear objectives, realistic, measurable, and time conscious. Objectives to say, maybe in the short term, maybe a 1-year period, a 2-year period, a 3-year period, I want to ensure that from the grassroots level, we identify, develop, harness the skills and the talents, maybe of cricketers, netballers, whatever discipline it is. And over a period of time, at the expiry of that time, you look back, you go at the drawing board, and you look to see whether or not you have achieved that objective. There is no such thing here, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely nothing here. And this is not a government, clearly not a government, that is interested. Not a government that is interested in sport, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what a new Democratic Party government will do. And I'm speaking specifically to the athletes out there. We recognize that sports has died a natural death. Well, maybe not a natural death, an untimely death under the Unity Labour Party. And what hasn't died is on the verge of dying and is in need of resuscitation. And therefore, the New Democratic Party has developed what we call an SOS framework for sports. Number one, Mr. Speaker,
After 15 years, yes.
the New Democratic Party will provide service to all of the athletes of this country. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by ensuring that there's an upgrade in all playing facilities in this country. Every single one, and we're not staying there, Mr. Speaker. Not just that we're going to develop those playing fields and hard courts. We're going to ensure that those facilities, Mr. Speaker, are properly lit. The National Lottery under the New Democratic Party will once again reclaim its true identity. It will be restored to its original idea, the concept that gave birth to the national lotteries to support sports and culture.
Not candidates.
Mr. Speaker, I want the athletes to understand and to visualize this, Mr. Speaker. The thing is, we do not want a situation, all of us want to play sports. Well, I hope so, at some point or the other, especially football, having to leave school or walk in the afternoon, run down to a playing field to play. No time to rest. No time to get fresh and go back to the playing facility. On a New Democratic Party government, you will get the opportunity to go home knowing that the games are going to be played on the lights. And that is something that we are guaranteeing you. That is something that we will deliver to you, the athletes of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The all as an opportunity. Again, Mr. Speaker, we will tackle sports from the grassroots level. There's so many athletes, the way I see it, have so much potential, but there's nothing to harness that potential. We will give them the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, at the grassroots level. We would be able to revive sports. And I know that there was a reference made some time ago, Mr. Speaker. You know, there was a time, and Senator Bruce, I'm sure, will take an interest in the fact that we are seeing a lot of talk about community groups and so on and so on and so on. Do you know why we have less and less community groups since this government came into power? Sporting clubs. The only clubs that we have, for the most part, are some football clubs, the 1 or 2 athletic clubs. But it can be a lot more organized. What we need to do, Mr. Speaker, is get these young people together from the primary school level, teach them the skill, and what we're going to do is hire present and past national athletes to impart the skill to these young people so that they would benefit. Because we see, when we play sports, we didn't have access to the internet where we can see so many different sporting disciplines being performed. But we want natural, raw talents. But now, Mr. Speaker, we would have heard with the West Indies cricket team, so many people talking about the days of Viv Richards and so on are over because those people had raw talent, but what needs to be done now is for that talent to be taught. What is this government doing to improve the innate ability of these athletes? It is a stalemate, Mr. Speaker. There are 1 or 2 people who have excelled because they are exceptional, they're gifted. But with the resources and the attention, I am sure that the athletes of this country will be able to compete with any athletes around the region and around the world. The New Democratic Party will give them that opportunity to be the best that they can be. The community groups, Mr. Speaker, we're going to make sure that there is, you know, they develop their organizational skills. And we want to liaise with the National Olympic Committee to ensure that whatever skills they have, they would be able to help local organizers so that they can run their own competitions and run it effectively. And you know what, Mr. Speaker, before I go off of sport? We're going to ensure, because we know that there is a living to be made from sports. We see that all around the world, and we wonder why our athletes can't make a living from sports here, although it is in the budget for 2020. That is why I'm saying that we talk a good talk, but there's nothing that we really do to back up our talk. We talk the talk, but we do not walk the talk. It is time for us to do far better than that, Mr. Speaker. We are intent on giving scholarships to gifted talents, gifted athletes in their respective disciplines. And I'm not saying this, Mr. Speaker, because I am making a budget presentation. I am saying this because they are members of the New Democratic Party. And I can speak for myself while I'm doing that, who have developed relations with other people, especially in North America and in England, who are willing to assist our athletes. And there's something in sports tourism. I know if this government was a serious government, there are clubs that want to train in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And not just that, you know, Mr. Speaker. When the club come, they bring in their families. There's a host of people who are coming in here. Not just is it going to enhance the type of sports that we're going to play here, but it is also going to spill off to tourism, sports tourism. And it is something that we really have to pursue. Why hasn't this government been doing that? I know there are people who have made offers. People who have been making offers to come here. And the government set up every possible roadblock to make sure they don't come. Why is that so? They can't be really serious about sports. Making sport is sports. And as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Speaker, it is a crime against sports. Mr. Speaker, I want to move on. And Mr. Speaker, when I get about 20 minutes, please allot me.
20 minutes? You have that now.
Considering the Campari talk, that
no,
subtracted some of my time.
No, you can be sure you will get that time back.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, very quickly, I want to talk about youth. And I want to make reference, just read something on page 33 of the budget speech. It has to do with youth. It is a wonderful time to be young in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Never before have young people been so embraced, so exposed to opportunities, and so encouraged to explore and exploit their skills, talents, and ideas. Well, Mr. Speaker, it is a wonderful time for the young people of this country, a time of wonder. And I'm wondering, Mr. Speaker, why is it that this government, who speaks so glowingly about the young people, why is it, Mr. Speaker? I mean, I am wondering, why is it so much glowing language, descriptions about the young people, but the unemployment situation among the young people, 46%. Huh? That's a wonderful time to be a young person. Because a young person under this administration, Mr. Speaker, has no future. For a young family, Mr. Speaker, who is looking for housing, and I'm not talking about the low-income housing, we will give true meaning to low income. Affordable housing, the New Democratic Party will present to the young people. You know, the young people wondering, when am I going to get a job to take care of my basic needs? How many young people have been writing application after application, Mr. Speaker, only to be told that there is no job available? So many of our young people are at the point of desperation, doing very anti-social things just to stay alive under this government. It is a wonderful time to be young in this country under the Unity Labour Party. Mr. Speaker, let us consider for a minute what the young people, there's so much talent. You know, a lot of people say that St. Vincent closed down after 6 o'clock. There's no nightlife. Well, I said to you, no nightlife? Not anymore under the New Democratic Party. I'm saying that because I'm not a person, I've never gone to a party or anything like that. I've never been. But guess what? Because I've never been, doesn't mean that I'm going to create a roadblock. Very funny. Very funny. You're trying hard to make people believe that we were such good friends. We were never friends. Mr. Speaker, the point I'm making here is that there's so much talent. We have drummers, we have dancers, we have singers, we have dramatists, all these people. What the New Democratic Party will do is make sure that we construct a center for performing arts. So these people who have their talents, Mr. Speaker, will be able to showcase their talent. They will have their own home. And speaking about home, Mr. Speaker, the long-awaited indoor sports facility will also be delivered to the people, the athletes of this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to go quickly to river defense. It is something, you know, I would not come make a presentation and don't talk about that because it is something that is very dear to me, Mr. Speaker. It is dear to me because I have a heart of compassion and I feel it for people. And I wonder if this government, Mr. Speaker, we talk so much about climate change. And yes, the minister gave an accurate picture of what changes in the climate can be, what changes in the weather pattern can be. But, Mr. Speaker, he made mention, yes, of a report that he was exposed to. And the scientists are now considering, Mr. Speaker, that any rise in temperature, especially with respect to the ocean of 1.5 degrees Celsius, can be catastrophic for small nations, small islands like St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It means that there will be longer periods of drought, and all of us want to experience that here. It means that there are streams that can disappear. But not just that. It means that there can also be rising sea levels. And I'm wondering, Mr. Speaker, being cognizant of that fact, what is the urgency? Or what is preventing this government from doing something proactively? Be more proactive. I give an example, Mr. Speaker. The people at Buckerman Bay, we're talking about the Buckerman River. And people must understand there that the Buckerman River flows from Vermont down into Buckerman Bay. But let us start from the sea. We know that most of the time when that river is in flood, the people in Buckerman Bay are flooded. One of the reasons for that, Mr. Speaker, is that every time a river flows into a standing body of water, what it will do is that it will just upwell, it will rise. So the river is flowing into a sea, the mouth of the river, it swells. It rises. The volume of water rises. It flows into the sea, it is the same thing that is happening. So whenever the river is in flood, that is the precise thing that is taking place in Buckerman. And it means, Mr. Speaker, that more flood is going to take place because the government has neglected to build retaining walls along the banks of those rivers. But that is not the worst part, Mr. Speaker. The frightening scenario here is, if we were to have rising sea levels, that river that we see flowing into Buckerman Bay will become what is called a weir. And for those persons who understand the work of surface water, will know that a weir is a drowned river valley. So rising sea levels mean now, Mr. Speaker, that the estuary itself is going to grow or migrate further inland. The salt water from the sea is going to go further and further up the course of the river, drowning that river. And when that happens, Mr. Speaker, the people in Buckerman Bay will be even more susceptible to flooding. What are we doing to protect those people, Mr. Speaker? We're talking a good talk, but what is it that we're doing? Where is the action, Mr. Speaker?
And remember, you have 15 minutes.
We talk so much about erosion in the upper course of the river in Vermont. How many times do I have to come here and talk and lament? I noticed in the budget, yes, as I alluded to it during the presentation of the estimates, Mr. Speaker, that the description there for that project is that the scope of the project is under review. But I noticed, yes, that and I was referred to some parts of the Minister of Finance's ministry, and I noticed something here in Appendix 6, Mr. Speaker, that says Bocaman River Defense, and as of 15th of February 2020, TBD, what does that mean? To be determined, is it? Okay, that is the start. The contractor to do the river defense that we hear the talk about so much that will be done there in March, the contractor is to be determined. So it's going to start in March, but you haven't decided on the contractor. Also, Mr. Speaker, the date that it will commence is in March. Well, March is next month. So you haven't decided on the contract, and it's going to be awarded this month. Okay, good. Then we will wait to see what happens. But, Mr. Speaker, while the government is playing the waiting game, lives and properties are at risk. Mr. Speaker, the Camden Park Clinic. The next Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Godwin Friday, alluded to it. That clinic is an eyesore. Yeah, the future is so bright, you can't face it with his naked eyes. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I've heard a presentation by the Minister of Health, not a single word about the Camden Park Clinic. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering, when the community center next door opens, I am hearing little whispers that say that the clinic will be transferred there. Is that so, Mr. Minister? No, I'm asking you about is it true? Is there any plan to transfer the clinic? But let me tell you something to consider. There is something that is called leaching. I'm sure that you're familiar with that concept. And I know that at the clinic, when the people go to dress their wounds and so on, that there is a pit where the oil dressing and so on, they put it in. But just in case there's a bright idea to transfer the clinic to that center, whenever it opens, consider the fact that there is a river that is flowing just in the back of the clinic. On any plan to do so, you must consider, if at all, how that pit is going to be erected. Because whenever rain falls, you see the thing about river. A river drains an entire area. It just is not confined to the two banks. Well, I am serving notice that leaching, if that's the bright idea, leaching can take place. Whatever is buried can be dissolved, and there's a stream that flows down into the sea. Think of the repercussions. Mr. Speaker, community center, the one in Vermont, oh my Lord. Why isn't some attention given to that, Mr. Minister? You're going to break it down? When are you going to break it down? Well, break it down fast. And build it up back as fast as you... As a matter of fact, don't worry. Just break it down, leave the money, and we will build it. Mr. Speaker, roads. I heard the Minister of... I heard the Minister with responsibility for works before drawing reference to the leader of the opposition when he was naming out some of the bad roads. He was essentially saying that if he call out all those roads, then what the other members are going to talk about. We'll have something to talk about. Let us start very quickly in Camden Park. The road above Bethel School collapsed 2 years ago. Yes. He talked about it because he is my leader. When is that going to be fixed? 2 years and counting. People can't drive there anymore. 2 vehicles attempted, took a risk, and ended up in the yard of the Camden Park Technical Institute. Yes, because this is a callous government that really doesn't care about the people, especially those people in Camden Park who have sinned a grave sin by not supporting the Unity Labour Party. And they must pay. And you're ensuring that they pay. And you're laughing about it, while so many people are being inconvenienced. Yes. This is a government of, well, they should put them in a park where you belong. The entire government. I don't know which one of you would be the joker. I don't care. Mr. Speaker, Bolami Road, from the Bureau of Standards. I've been talking about this since 2010, just in the back of Jerry Scott's house there, and exiting at the Bureau of Standards. For so many years, nothing can be done about that. In Coconut Range, by Princess Miller, you know, there's a 14-foot road there, Mr. Speaker. Some bright person decide, some person from Broxton, Mr. Minister, you ought to know about that, and if you don't know about it, it's a shame. Decide that they are going to put a 4-foot steps in the road, a 14-foot road they're talking about, and in the middle of that road, they clear out something to say that they're going to put a step. What kind of government is this? Well, let me tell you something. Eh? If you can't do a road, we don't want a step. That's the kind of government that we have. That's the kind of government and the thought process that is going on. How can you conceptualize something like that? Knowing that there are people who are living there. A motorable road, people used to drive along there, now you want to put steps. There's a road above, right between Elsa Daniel and Deborah Diamond. Mr. Speaker, when King David came, they dropped some materials to say they're going to do. Yes, the people, this very person that you forget about. But once upon a time, he was a king. Dropped some materials to do that road, to create the impression that something's going to be done. Up to today. What are you talking about? I didn't realize I have an opponent. Mr. Speaker, the point is, 2010, this is 2020, not a single thing has been done. I'm going to drive up that road and you look at it carefully, there is a drain that is flowing from Top Kittels down into Coconut Range. In the dry season, Mr. Speaker, there's an enormous volume of water that's going down there. And because of the high gradient, you can understand the amount of erosion that is going to take place there. It undercut the concrete road. It undercut the road. I came in here before, I talked about it, and up to today, nothing is done. At any given time, a vehicle can actually drive there, and it can collapse. Come on, Mr. Speaker, come on. The first question that I asked when I came into this parliament in 2010 is about a road between Kittadel Plesh and Vendorum, just opposite to where the road collapsed. Above Bethel School there. Nothing. Bottom the Hill Road to Kittels, nothing. Bedrock in Clare Valley, whenever it rains, people have to be walking on all fours. Nothing. What exactly is this government? Where is the priority of this government? They talk so much but deliver so little. The Caribou Road in Camden Park need fixing. In Chauncey, in Merricky, opposite the Unity Labour Party office. I don't know how many times you visit that. But why don't you just walk up into Merricky and see the state of the road? Look at Carco, in Coco above Matthias there. Terrible roads. In Welland Hill, Big Bush Road. I don't know if you can call it a road. There's a road just behind the Catholic Church in Welland Hill. It needs attention. The people who live just below there, below the cemetery, the footpaths across there. It is so uncomfortable to walk, Mr. Speaker. South Leeward, just like most of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is a constituency that has been neglected by this government. Go across to an area that we call Paris Corner. The Minister...
I remember you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, you must be familiar with that road. Yes. Beyond Big Stone in Penniston, going down to where the Paris house is. Terrible. Skip across the little river there, the little gutter, to Hog Hole in that area between Penniston and 20 Hill. Terrible. Number 5. I heard so many things being said about Number 5 Road. At one time, you know, it actually made a press conference by this government. And up to today, nothing except that the concrete is gone and what we have there is dirt again. In Top Village, Mr. Speaker, and my heart goes out to those people out there, especially Inik, who fell so many times on that road. One lady fell, broke her hand, going up to that road by Lawrence Guy. Nothing is done. And Mr. Speaker, I see this thing as a recurrent decimal again. Verifying Road in Francois. And also, this mountain road that is called Maloney. Every budget, these are in the budget. So is this a serious exercise? Or you're only doing it because you have to do it? When would those roads be done, Mr. Speaker? And finally, there's a wonderful linkage that can be made between South Leeward, Central Leeward, and North Leeward. By using that same Maloney Road, Mr. Speaker, going into Bellwood in Layu, into Hermitage up in Spring Village, and continuing and exiting just above the bridge in Sharps in Chateaubelair. That holds great potential for tourism for nature lovers. Let's open that so that the people, there's something else that people can look forward to when they're visiting St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Is this a government with vision, foresight? Is this a government that really cares about the potential that is there? Well, I'm not surprised that nothing is done. Because as a river, when it's in the old age stage, all that it can do is lay down its heavy burden. And that is precisely what this government has been doing. This is the operation of the government. It is a government, Mr. Speaker, that is begging the people of this country to send them home. Begging. I'm asking you, St. Vincent and Grenadines, give them this wish, because they have outlived their usefulness. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
We now hear from the Honorable Minister of Housing, Montgomery Daniel.